Welcome back to another episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. We're glad to have you here with us for this one, the big episode number 30. And we are
Oh,
going to be breaking down not only season 3 or the final episode of The Mandalorian season 3, but also just kind of talking about Mando as a whole and some other fun Star Wars news. Julie, what do you think? This is episode number 30 of the podcast. Kind of wild.
I can't believe that. When did we start? In September? Is that
Yeah,
kind of around?
we're definitely over half a year at this point, which is kind of cool to think about.
That's crazy. And we've only missed maybe a couple of weeks
Yeah,
also throughout that time.
I think we've only missed what, maybe 2 or 3 total.
Maybe, yeah. That's
That's
wild.
pretty
That
good, honestly.
I think that's pretty good. As non-committal as I normally am, to have have a pretty solid schedule like that. And some weeks we've gone 2 videos too with
It's true.
reaction videos too. So we've definitely made up for the missed ones. But yeah, happy 30th.
Definitely. And also that serves as a good plug for our video from yesterday, the Mandalorian season 3 episode 8 reaction and the finale that we posted. If you haven't checked that out, link will be available in the description of this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple, Spotify, or if you're watching the video version over here on YouTube. Great to have you here. Also, if you're not subscribed to the Hoth Hangout channel on YouTube, do us a massive favor and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate each and every single one of you for doing that. If you haven't already, definitely do so. And yeah, I think we're at, what, 114 now, which is pretty awesome. So
We're climbing the ranks.
climbing the ranks, definitely so. Well, just a few other things to touch on before we dive into the nitty gritty of the finale of season 3, because I think we both have quite a few thoughts on this. We had some initial thoughts last night at the end of the episode that we briefly mentioned. Curious to see over the past 24 hours how those thoughts might have been amended or changed in any way. But of course, we will get to those eventually. First off, want to say that at the time of this recording, it is April 19th, meaning that we are a little over a week from the release of Jedi Survivor. Joey, I know you've been playing. We were talking about before we started recording. You've been playing through a little bit of Fallen Order in preparation. How's that going?
Pretty good. I think there's a total of like 6 chapters, and I'm on the fifth one, like halfway through the fifth one. So should be uh should be finishing that up this week. There's also a book called Jedi Battle Scars that I also purchased that is supposed to take place in between the two games. So I've
Mm.
got I've got the game to finish up and a book to read before before next week. So
You,
we'll
you,
see
you
if
got 8 days.
yeah, we'll see if I could finish up my homework by then.
Is the book about Cal Kestis?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I need to check that out. Battle Scars, right? Was that the name?
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. I need to look into that one. Is it like a full novel or is it like a graphic novel?
It's a full novel. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, and speaking of novels, I've been trying to finally get into the High Republic stuff as well.
Hmm?
And so I'm 2 books into that whole era right now, which I just finished the second book. Um, so yeah, it's that's a pretty good era. I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing from that. I think you read some of the comics, right?
Yeah, I have a few of them. I think I was just a little uneducated on which comic sets and series went with what. So the
Mm-hmm.
ones that I purchased originally were just ones that looked interesting to me and not necessarily like coordinated together story wise.
All
So
right.
they were all fun to read, but I don't think most of them didn't connect with one another in a direct way, which in retrospect, I kind of wish I would have ordered like sequential comic books.
Right, of course.
But, it was still really good. The era is awesome, which also we should sometime, we should do like a ranking portion of a podcast where we take that new timeline that Star Wars recently released and we rank every era. And
Ooh,
we
I
can
like
each
that.
have our own rankings. I feel like that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Spoiler alert: Old Republic is going pretty high for me. but
Spoiler alert, it's gonna go pretty low for me because I know nothing about it.
well, to be fair to your point about the High Republic, it's a really cool era, and I'm glad we're gonna get be able to get to see more of it in future Star Wars content outside of just the comic books and the novels. So it's a fun time to be a Star Wars fan, that's for sure. And then, of course, with May the 4th coming up here in about 2 weeks, lots of other exciting things in store for us. For me, mainly that primary thing being Visions Episode 2. I'm super stoked for that to
Season 2.
come out. Or, yeah, Season 2, excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, Season 2 of Visions. Season 1, Visions to me, I think I've said this before on the podcast, is the most underrated piece of Star Wars material, in my opinion. I just think it's because a lot of people don't know about it, or they see like these, funky, different animated looking episodes, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's not Star Wars." But it is great. If you haven't seen season 1 of Visions, definitely encourage you to watch it, especially if you're listening or watching this in the next 2 weeks prior to May the 4th. Uh, Definitely give season 1 a watch. You can watch the whole season in probably like 3
Hours.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not long episodes. They're like, I think 20 minutes at most, and there's like 10 of them.
I
I
think
want to
there's
say.
I think there's like a 25-minute in there as well, but
Yeah,
for them, yeah, I started rewatching that too in preparation for Visions season 2, just to get me in the mindset again of all that. But yeah, it is pretty fun. It's great art that the each of the stories tell, and I think the what people maybe don't really like about it. I mean, that's not considered obviously like canon things, right? I mean, those are just stories
yeah,
that
it's
are based off
non-canonical.
of. Yeah, it's all based off of the stories.
Which I normally I'm of the mind where I want canon. I want to like
Mhm.
know and learn and read and watch stories that are canonical because it influences the lore and the world and just what Star Wars is. But it's cool watching something from the perspective going into it that it's not going to be canonical, because I think it operates under this banner of freedom where it's like we can do whatever the
Yeah,
heck we want and it's just
that's
cool
true.
and no one's going to get upset because it doesn't affect anything lore wise or the greater picture or anything. It's just like, wow, that was a cool lightsaber fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
When I was rewatching it, I rewatched the Ronin one,
oh, it's so
the very
good.
first
It's
one.
so good. I love that
It's
one.
so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. So yeah, I agree. The artistic freedom that they have when you don't have to, spot check and text Dave Filoni every 15 minutes. Like, is this legit? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Just makes for fun pieces that they make.
Yeah. Hopefully we get some other cool trailers and announcements on May the 4th maybe as well. Um and if not, then D23 I think is in September this year. I think that's right. I think it's like mid-September, I want to say. And we'll most definitely be getting some pretty big Star Wars announcements. Kind of akin to what I think the Marvel announcements are like, where they'll do like the 3-year plan where it's like these are
Mm.
all the shows that are going to come out. I think D23 is supposed to be where they introduce the shows like beyond Acolyte, Ahsoka, and Skeleton Crew
Oh,
that we're going to be introducing into the universe as well. I've heard rumors that there might be as many as 3 new ones that they introduce at D23. So
interesting.
could be lots of new exciting news coming in the later half of the year as well. Excuse me, and then of course Ahsoka in August, which I think at this point, after having seen season 3 of Mando, is like the main thing on the horizon for lots of Star Wars fans. Understandably, I mean, for me, I think it is. As much as I'm excited for Visions, the second season, Ahsoka is definitely the thing I'm looking forward to most.
And that's going to be a shorter run too. That's an 8 episode one as well. Is that right?
Yeah, only 8. I get it. I mean, that's the style they're going for. That's what they've done for. They did that for Book of Boba too, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They did it for Book of Boba, and obviously they just got done doing it for Mando season 3. So I get it.
Wait, what was Andor?
Andor was longer than 8. I'm pretty certain, or it may
Yeah.
have been like 2 8.5 seasons. Does that sound right? I mean, we can look it up on the spot
Yeah.
while we continue sort of talking about you know the Mandalorian and sort of this approach that we're now going to be having going into other shows
Yeah,
like
there's 12.
Ahsoka.
There's 12 episodes.
Okay, it was 12, not 16. Okay, but still, uh more than anything else we've had recently. So, anyways, yeah, the shortened seasons. I don't think I'm inherently opposed to that, but I just think it does not allow for as much flexibility as I would
Mhm.
like in the story. It feels like very contained. And when you end up having like, more or less throwaway episodes, like episode 6 of season 3 of Mando, much as we all love Jack Black and Lizzo, like that episode really did nothing.
Yeah, right.
So, episodes like that are fun, but if Ahsoka is gonna have one, two, three episodes
Hmm.
like that, then that's pretty disappointing as a Star Wars fan, I would say.
Right.
But it's cool to see the cameos, I guess.
Yes.
Well, having said all of that, of course, we did just finish with the third season of Mandalorian. Definitely different feelings at this point in time than I think most Star Wars fans had at the conclusion of season 2, partially because that was so long ago and there was such a massive gap of time, mainly because of COVID, between the end of season 2 and the beginning of season 3, production wise, not necessarily within the timeline of the show, of course, but well, I guess there was there too a little bit,
Yeah.
with Grogu training. Which I was watching an interview with John Favreau, and he was saying that that time gap was also meant to reflect sort of the real life time gap
Right.
that took place between like the end of season 2, the not being able to film season 3 right away because of COVID, and um, anyway, so I thought that was interesting that it sort of
Hmm.
that real life mirrored itself in the show in a way. Um, but all that to say, I think the overall attitude of Star Wars fans regarding Mandalorian is very different. So I guess let's just start with the episode itself, the finale. I think both of our initial thoughts, I used the word safe to describe it. Not that it was bad, because I think we both enjoyed the episode. I think the general consensus from everything I've seen online in the past 24 hours, as if they were doing like a 1 to 10 scale, not necessarily a 10, but definitely most people weren't giving it lower than like a 7. Like it was still a great episode.
Right.
Just because it didn't do anything shocking
Hmm.
or daring or risky. I think some people see that as, well, it could have done more. I don't know.
Sure.
Have your thoughts adjusted or changed any since the last or since in the last 24 hours, I should
Yeah.
say?
I think the only thing that has changed in my mind is, the if this was the last episode of the series, I think this would have been just like perfect. Just kind of wrapped it all up.
Especially the last
And
10 minutes.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it had very much the medal ceremony vibes,
Mm-hmm.
really, where everything was perfect, exactly how we wanted it. Um, Mandalore has risen again, and we have everybody happy, and Din and Grogu got their own place now, and on Navarro, and I, I think if this was the end of the series, I think this would have been better. But for this to be the end of a season without any without any post credit scenes where maybe it kind of gives us an idea of what the next season will be, because I mean right now I have no idea what even what even we could be going after now. At least with the previous seasons you kind of had an idea of what was to come.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was this the season we expected when we ended last season? I'm not sure about that either. But I think a season as a whole it was pretty good. But I think that if this was this, like I said, if it was a series ender, I think this would have been fine. But as a season finale, I guess I do want a little bit more.
Yeah, it has me thinking a lot about season 4. Because honestly, if tomorrow Star Wars came out and was like, hey, look, we've decided that we're no longer going to invest our time in The Mandalorian. The episode was written in a way where it's like, oh, well, at least it ended on a on a good note. Like, at
Right.
least it wasn't a cliffhanger. So maybe, because I know there's been like weird production stuff with Pedro Pascal, the person, for those that don't know, that's the actor that plays Din Djarin in The Mandalorian. So I don't know if that plays at all into a writer's perspective when they're creating the script. of like, well, just in case Pedro backs out, maybe we should end it on a satisfactory note. That way, in case. But I don't know if that goes into the logic or the thinking of writing the episode. It just has me thinking a lot for season 4 because at this point, it feels like we've almost circled back to where he was at the beginning of season 1, except for now he has Grogu with him as his sidekick. Like, more or less, now he's just like another bounty hunter again. I mean, there's the New Republic stuff. Like, he's kind of working for the New Republic, so he's in with them. And Grogu's like a Mandalorian now, more or less, a Mandalorian apprentice. Din Grogu, I should say. Excuse me.
Din Grogu, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I'm game for a 4th season of a show where it's like Din and Grogu on like a bounty hunter mission for a couple episodes, but that just doesn't. That doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I will say this. Say this. So, I am more excited for the next Bad Batch season.
Yeah, me too.
Season.
By far. We should make some sort of like, if we ever do one of these podcasts as a live stream, we could introduce polls to the channel and be like, which of these are you most excited for?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would agree with you on the sentiment of I'm more excited for Bad Batch season 3 than Mando season 4. Here's a question, not to deter too much from Mandalorian, I guess, but are you more excited for Bad Batch season 3 or Andor season 2?
I mean, those are on the same level, I feel now.
Mm-hmm.
Before, if you would have asked me going into this year or before any of these shows came out, which show are you going to be more excited for the following season? The order is all messed up. I would have said Mandalorian first.
I think it's reversed.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would have said Mandalorian first, and then I would have said Bad Batch, and then I would have said Andor. Mainly because I didn't know anything about Andor. So that's for season 2, I would have not known anything of what I would have liked. Bad Batch, at least I had some type of history with, so I understand that. But Mando was top easily. But now, like you said, it's flipped it on its head. I want to see Andor first, and then I want to see Bad Batch, and then Mandalorian, which is crazy. How that's flipped on, and I'm curious on other people if that's the general thought of a lot of people, a lot of fans, or if we're the ones that are just really loving Andor that much.
I think most people are pretty on board with Bad Batch. I haven't heard hardly any negative feelings towards that. I think the Andor audience is still pretty split. I think there's more people who are proponents for it, but there's still a pretty wide audience who's like, nah, Andor is not for me. So boring. No lightsabers. But I guess I get it to an extent, but...
And I know people that, whenever I mention Andor, they're like, oh, I couldn't get past the first couple episodes. I'm like, you've got to get past the first couple episodes.
I mean, that was our issue when we watched Andor. That's what we really started our podcast with, was watching those Andor episodes early on, and it was like 1, 2, and 3. Well, maybe 3 was a little bit better toward the end of it, of course, but like episodes 1 and 2 of Andor are kind of slow. And it has that, I mean, it's not nearly as overwhelming, but that Game of Thrones comparison, and that, like, who's this character? Who's that character?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of just like throwing characters at you, and you don't know them at that point. So you're like, why do I care about this? Who's that?
Right.
So, no, but all that to say, like, if you're someone out there who watched like 1 or 2 episodes of Andor, decided it wasn't for you, yeah, definitely go back and watch like at least to episode 6.
Yeah,
power
through.
Yeah, and then make that call if you want to say, well, I watched half the season and decided it wasn't for me. But episodes 1 and 2 are a little bit slow, admittedly. All that to say, yes, I a year ago, I would have been most excited for Mandalorian, and now I think it's what I'm least excited for. Isn't that wild? Of those three.
Right. So. And not to say, I mean, I enjoyed the season. I don't know if we want to get into this quite yet, but I enjoyed the season. I enjoyed the story that, of Bo-Katan, her emergence of, leading Mandalore once again. I thought that was really cool. And I don't know, I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but I think when we have so much content out there, we could start. It's so easy to just compare things and the enjoyment factors of each of them, and you know, sometimes you can't be stuck in the hole and be like, I'm going to only watch Mandalorian and that's it. You gotta see what else is out there, and then you might surprise yourself.
Yeah. What do you think the writing process is for these directors and these writers for these episodes? And maybe not even the writing process. What I'm more concerned with is like the post production, where they sit down as Disney executives or Star Wars executives or whoever it is in the boardroom who makes the final call. Okay, this is what we're going with. Like, who was the person that watched all 8 of these together and then said, "Yeah, that makes a pretty cohesive story. Let's just go with that." Because I think that's the biggest thing this season suffers from, is that it doesn't feel like a consistent train of thought. And it just felt like there was a lot of, not side quests, kind of like the Bad Batch episodes, but almost stuff that just didn't matter a ton. I mean, episode 6 is the easy thing to point out, but I think they just spend too much time on certain things. Like the Mandalorian covert, it was cool to kind of like get integrated into that, that underground society, so to be. But it felt like we were with them for like 2 episodes where nothing really happened. And that's just what I mean with this season. It didn't feel like it progressed anywhere. And if you look at where we ended up with, well, spoiler, by the way, if you haven't yet seen the episode and you're this far into the podcast and you're not wanting to be spoiled by the, with the information for the 8th episode, well, I guess plug your ears at this point. But it just feels like the end of season 3 and the end of season 2. I mean, the end of season 2 is better, don't get me wrong. But it feels like the same thing happened twice. And why? Like, what really was the purpose of Gideon coming back?
Right.
Was it to just give us more information about cloning? Because that's kind of what his purpose feels like was in season 3. For us as the viewer to be like, oh, this is how cloning is progressing at this point in time, as we assumingly are learning more about it to prepare us for the eventual revival of Palpatine and through one of like what we assume now is a clone. And I don't know. I didn't really see in the grand scheme of things if Gideon was, I guess we don't know he's gone 100% for certain. Right. Doesn't that always frustrate you too? I feel like Star Wars does that a lot. Even when a person is 100% gone, they could, I'm not saying
a clone.
Yeah. I'm not saying I didn't love that they brought Darth Maul back. I'm just saying that if in Star Wars, if you think a person is gone, there's a decent chance they're not. And we don't know for certain Gideon is gone. But it just, I don't.
Come on, Tech.
Yeah, Tech is another great example. Yeah. I just don't understand his role in the season. I guess all that to say. I don't know. Maybe that is too hypocritical, or too critical, I should say, not hypocritical, too critical of the season. What do you think about Gideon, and maybe especially with the final episode, the way he went out in a blaze of fury?
I think Gideon seemed to just be the villain from a distance, and for a majority of the season, where you just never even saw him. And I don't know if I like that necessarily. I like seeing the villain and what we're up against, and I because by the time we actually got to him, the Imperial base was pretty much all set on Mandalore, right? And the Shadow Council was there. So I mean, everything was already set up by the time we got to him, which I did appreciate. But at the same time, I would have liked to have seen that progression as well, to see where kind of a parallel timelines of what was he doing during this entire time. I mean, he wasn't just hiding out, in Mandalore and the Forge where nobody ever checked apparently, where there's a huge Imperial base. But I think I would have rather have seen him a little bit more often this season than like the last 3-4 episodes, whatever it was.
I think it was even less than that, wasn't it? I thought wasn't he not in it until episode, was it 6 or 7? I think it was 7, wasn't it? On the holocom with Elia.
Right.
It almost feels like the actor had some sort of like pre-obligation, was like, yeah, sorry, I can't be there until the 7th episode is filmed.
Yeah. I don't know. He seems pretty down for Mandalorian. I don't know if you've
No,
ever
I
seen
know, I
him.
was like half kidding, but
Yeah. He is super down for Mandalorian. He's always yelling "Long live the Empire" wherever he is at. So but no, yeah, so as much as I enjoy, I mean, I enjoy the role. I enjoy the actor. He's a great villain, but we just didn't see enough of him. And there was no urgency. I think we had the same issue with, was it with Bad Batch, or maybe it was even just with Mandalorian here. Just what pushes along interest is urgency sometimes. And a lot of the season was just kind of like, all right, well, I want to go to Mandalore and go to the Living Waters. All right, sounds good. Let's go over there. Like there's nothing more than just his personal need to do it. That's
Mhm.
not necessarily enough to be interesting for all the watchers. So I think that's where it lacked that sense of urgency. I mean, this episode though, I will say there was a lot of that sense of urgency, which I did really enjoy. There was the fight between the Mandalorians and the Dark Troopers. Obviously,
It was
everything with
awesome.
the Praetorian guards against Din and Grogu. You see Grogu finally using his force, using the force in order to help out in battle. You see, so there was a lot. There was a lot that happened in this episode that I really did like, and that's kind of one thing I did want to ask you was to a
Yeah,
quick little game for you to see what your thoughts were. You have to rank these 5 things that happened
I love this
in this
game. I
episode.
love ranking things. It's one of my favorite things in life.
So rank these 5 things that happened in the episode from most interesting or most enjoyable, entertaining
Okay,
to
I'm ready.
to number 5, right? So we've got, let's see, the Gideon clones.
Okay.
Gideon clones. Um, you've got, okay, Gideon clones. Axe wolves destroying the facility with the capital ship.
Okay.
The force field used by Grogu.
Okay. To prevent the fire from hitting
Mm-hmm.
him and Din and Bo.
Right. The destruction of the dark saber
Okay.
and the Mandalorian Dark Trooper battle. So I know there's
Okay.
5 things.
What was the very first one again?
Gideon clones, the
Oh,
axe,
right. And I'm rating them
axe,
on how interesting it is
how interesting, entertaining, however you would want
to
to
me
rank them.
personally, or to like the
Yeah, to you.
general.
No,
Okay.
to you, yeah, to you. What tickled your fancy? What interested you, or maybe intrigued you for later discussions, or just like right in the moment there? So Gideon clones, the
Okay.
axe destroying the facility.
So 5 is least interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
So yeah,
5. I think I'll go with Axe Wolves
okay,
destroying the facility. I think when we were both watching that part, we thought it was gonna be like this martyric death for him,
yeah.
and then he just like blasted
Peaced
open
out.
the window, and it was like, oh yeah, he can do that. And then, so I don't know if that is like of particular interest. I guess I thought it was cool, but I don't think it has any like long term connotations or impacts on the show itself. So for that reason, I'll put that at 5. Or, ooh, I don't know. Can I just say the clones thing? The Gideon clones, like, did they die? Like, they broke the tanks and the clones just die? Is that what happens?
I mean, that's what we assume the way that Gideon was talking, right?
Right. He's like, you destroyed them. But, like, all
Right.
he
Yeah.
did was, like, I don't
Freedom.
know.
Were they
I,
not done cooking? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the cloning
yeah.
process.
I almost want to put that at 4 just because
Mm-hmm.
I just thought the scene wasn't done very well. Like, I thought that could have been done in a way, like, I don't know, maybe he like injects like a toxin into each tank or something that is like more apparently
Mm-hmm.
like destroying the clones rather than them just like flopping out of the casings
Right.
and
I mean, and may I mention he did mention that apparently these were like upgraded clones where they
right,
could
they
use
were
the
supposed to be
force or
force
something.
sensitive, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Which
So
that seems to be that feels non-canonical to me. How do
mm-hmm.
you
How do you
instill the
yeah.
force anyways, there's a lot of ground to cover there, like to get us from
Right.
how is that possible. So
Right. And that's why I mentioned, is that something to discuss later, right? Is that
right,
something that we need to
I think
get into?
that's the only reason I'm not gonna put this one at number 4
Mm-hmm.
because I'm I'm just genuinely curious where they're going with all this cloning stuff. Like they're talking about it in basically every show now, to the point where it is such a focal point that it's become unavoidable. So it is interesting in that sense. So, gosh, I'm gonna save that one for 4. What was it? Breaking Darksaber, the Force Field, and what was the other one?
Mandalorian Dark Trooper battle.
Yeah, I think I'll go with that at number 4, the Mandalorian Dark Trooper battle. Don't get me wrong, super cool. Definitely the best fight scene of the season. Well, the yeah, I actually think I did like the Mandalorian versus Dark Troopers better than the Din or Bo versus Gideon scene,
Oh
believe it or
yeah.
not.
Mm-hmm.
Just something about flying
Visually.
Yeah, it's like they're all. I told you while we were live reacting, I was like, this is what someone in 1977 going into the first Star Wars would have thought Star Wars was going to look like in their wildest imagination. Like people with jetpacks flying at each other. They've got swords and, they're meeting midair and they're
Guns.
fighting and shooting rockets and, it was cool. It was easily the best part of the episode. Well, I might have to walk that one back. It was the best fight scene of the episode for sure.
Yes.
Of the season, I would say.
I would agree.
And if you take out the Luke stuff from the end of season 2, I would argue the best fight scene of the entire show. Having said all that, I don't think it, again, much like the Axe Wolves thing, it doesn't like do anything for the overall story, which for me is what drives interest most. So I'll put that at number 4 for that reason. Grogu with the force field, I'm going to do number 3, I think. Along the similar line of thinking, while it does pertain to the overall story and the show, all it's really doing is showing that he's grown really a lot stronger in the force in this time period since we've seen him at the end of episode 2. And of course what he's doing with the Praetorian Guards too. Like he's jumping around, he's doing flips. He's using the force actively in battle, even though he's not, using it aggressively per se. He's using it to like push people's weapons away and take out their legs when Din is about to hit them, or some small thing like that. So I'll go with that number 3 because it's emphasizing that Grogu is definitely growing in power and ability. 2, gosh, do I want to put cloning at 1? I think I'm going to put cloning at 2 out of a sense of frustration with how that scene was done.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just a lack of understanding is a better way of saying it than frustration. But I'm still really interested in the cloning stuff. And I won't reiterate kind of what I already said earlier about that. And I'll just let it speak for itself. Which means I guess Darksaber is number 1. Only because I love kind of just the lore that surrounds the Darksaber. I think there's just a general sentiment of confusion now. It's like, can it be fixed? I mean, it's something I want to see again, the Darksaber. Right. And I would assume it'll probably be fixed in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Bo would still have it at this point. She probably recovered it and might have the armorer fix it, or I don't really know. But I don't see it just going away after being broken in the battle. That seems odd to me. And as a Darksaber aficionado, I guess I really want to see that in the rest of Mandalorian. So I guess that would be my order. Yeah, I like that question.
Nice.
Yeah. Did you have a particular order?
So my order would go, I'm kind of going off the cuff here as well. And this is, I kind of mix it between entertainment factor, interesting / is this something we can discuss later on, right? So I think the feeling I got when I saw the Mandalorian Dark Trooper battle was, I think I felt like those people in 1977 who thought this was Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to put that at 1.
Okay,
that's at 1 because when I was watching that, and then and I can't even mention it during the live react, and and Bo took out the Darksaber like super early, but still, it was just a very very pivotal moment, where she is literally leading them into battle and with the Darksaber. I just thought that was symbolically beautiful, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just visually stunning just to kind of see all these people. And even during the battle between Din and Gideon, and I kind of mentioned this too, you kind of saw them in the background still fighting. So just like little things like that, I thought it was really cool. So I think that I put that at number one. For two, I put the Darksaber, destruction of the Darksaber, for the same reason. It's just, well, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying
Like, is Bo
because
still the leader even if she
right,
doesn't have the dark saber?
or are we saying because this is a united Mandalore, that they're all the Mandalorians are united? This is a new era. So do we kind of just scrap all the old things because they don't wear the helmets? They're not necessarily need to wear their helmets anymore, and just things like that. There's a lot of difference from what it was even before the season. What's considered a Mandalorian? So I think
Yeah.
there's just many types of them now. So I think maybe that's where they're gonna go, because part of me is like, if you were gonna destroy the Darksaber, why would you fix it then? If you were, from a long story standpoint, right? If you, why go through this part of it?
Sure.
You could
Yeah.
have easily just,
Not had it destroyed in the
not have
battle.
it destroyed, right? Yeah. If only to fix it later. I mean, it seems kind of like, from a storytelling standpoint, I don't think that it would make sense to do this part at all if you were just gonna just recreate it. So that's kind of that's where my thought is with it, and it means like the whole definition, the whole you know the whole reason to be Mandalorians, to be, this changes. It all just changes. So that's kind of what I think about that. What happened there? Um, I think Gideon's also, yeah. Gideon clones will be third again for the same reason. There's a lot of questions, and my whole thing is like, what do you mean force sensitive? How do you do this? How does that pertain to anything? How do you get that involved with cloning? Because it would make sense. Because if the Emperor finally gets it, Emperor is force sensitive already.
Mhm.
Does he add on to it, or does he, does
You
he
know,
put a little bit more force sensitivity in him, or what I mean? So I
I
think
don't
that's
think
just
they're
maybe.
ever going to explain it. I think it's going to be
I don't think so.
frustrating that they don't. I think it's going to be one of those things that you're just like, well, it's just a force sensitive clone.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
That
okay.
you never got to see. You never even got to see it.
Yeah.
And then wrap it up with, yeah, the force field by Grogu, and then Axe with the facility too. I thought I really wanted we both wanted, not that we wanted, but we expected Axe to kind of go down with the ship.
Hmm.
But what was funny is that I'm like, right, he has a jetpack. Like, because that never happens. You think of all the times when the captain goes down with the ship, they just literally go down with the ship. There's nothing you could do about it. But oh yeah, he has a way to actually get out. I thought that was, to me,
Yeah.
that was more humorous than anything else.
Poor Axe. We both put him at number 5 on that list.
Yeah.
The the episode itself, I think the whole time we were watching, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying more a bit ago about the the episode feeling almost safe in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time it was like, oh, what's something bad's gonna happen? Something bad's gonna happen. Like, is the Mythosaur gonna come in? Is Din or Bo not gonna make it out of here? And even like after Gideon was defeated, I think I was this way. I don't know if you were. I was like, oh, it's not over yet. Something bad's gonna happen.
Right.
And then it just kind of ended peacefully. So
Right.
I was a little surprised by that we didn't. And the way they showed the Mythosaur, it wasn't like in a battle or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was also something I wanted to bring up and address, was that their inclusion of the Mythosaur into the final episode was kind of like, okay, that was kind of a cop out, but sure.
Yeah. Right.
Um, the last thing I wanted to talk about, not necessarily with the episode, but the season as a whole. This is the one thing. I think there's a lot of things with the Mandalorian that I can get over. I think something that I've almost found myself thinking about every week is the armorer's character development. I feel like the character was very different after like episode 3 or 4. And it was like the first couple episodes, it was like, if you want to be a part of the Mandalorians, you need to bathe in the living waters. And then like suddenly Bo enters the fold and she's like, take the helmet off, unite us. And it just didn't feel developed enough. And then I thought they were going to tie that in somehow. This is kind of not related, but maybe it is somewhat, because I thought it was going to be the armor who was going to be the answer to this question, in that the title of the 7th episode was The Spies. So everyone was going into this finale being like, all right, we're going to learn who this other spy was, because Aaliyah is presumed, obviously, to be one of the spies. And then it didn't, I mean, what is your takeaway on the spies thing? Like, who was the other spy? Is Gideon considered the spies? Like,
Right.
I don't really know what they were going at there.
I mean, I couldn't even tell you. I mean, when we talked about it last week, we mentioned spies. We had our ideas, but yeah, I was kind of expecting the same thing going into this episode. Pretty early on, I'm like, all right, and we kept saying like, oh, it's X, oh, it's this guy, oh, it's this guy, So, but to have no one really become evident that there was another spy. So I don't know if that was just a typo in the somebody didn't. There's an editor that didn't put the
Dang
sure
it.
that they
Daryl from the editing department accidentally put an extra S in the title. Just leave it. They'll be asking questions. It'll generate clicks.
Or like maybe there was another cut. Maybe there was another spy. Who knows? I don't know. But
that'd be kind of an interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate that we never learned out of this, this episode especially, that there was another spy or not. But kind of weird. And yeah, and I saw all on the internet too, just saying, "Oh, it was this person. Oh, why this person's the spy?" And
Yeah.
But yeah, all that for nothing.
Last question, and then we can re-rate the episode after we rated it last night too. The date as of filming and recording this is actually now April 20th. Fast forward, April 20th, 2025. Is season 4 of The Mandalorian released?
Oh my gosh.
2 years from today.
How long was it from the last one? From the past season?
Well, I think it was longer than 2 years, but I think that was a lot of the reason that was because of COVID.
Yeah.
So for context, Andor is supposed to come out August of 2024, which is roughly 14 months from now.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think we see Mando again until 2025, if I'm being honest.
So you're saying 2 years from now, you're saying that we still will not have watched a season.
It's either going to be like December of 2024, or they're going to push it to a spring 2025 release, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say yes, we will see at least part of the season by now.
I hope so. I sure hope so. Which leads me to my next question. Last night, you gave the finale episode, did you say A or A+?
I said A, yeah.
A. Is your grade the same? And if it is not the same, why?
Okay, I'm going to bump it down a little bit to A-.
Okay.
Because, I had the thought of it, since this is, again, the season finale, not a series finale, it really didn't leave anything up in the air. And that's what is intriguing about waiting for another season. Like, right now, if they, just like you said, if they said, oh, you know what, that was actually the last episode of the series, we would be fine, like, oh, that's fine. This we're fine with it.
Which also, what does that say about all of our attitudes towards the show? Like, if they were to end it, our demeanor would be like, okay, like, I'm excited for the other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, right. There's no way we would have been saying that a year and a half ago before season 3 had ever even been like announced, or the trailer had been shown, or
and here's where I think part of that comes is because there's so much other stuff.
Yeah, which is the
Like
cool part of Star Wars
yeah,
now, I think.
if they would have said, if tomorrow John Favreau says, you know what, that was it, we're all done. We're like, okay, well, we got Visions in a couple weeks,
We've
so
got
that should be
Visions, we
fine.
got Andor, we got Ahsoka, we got Bad Batch, we got shows galore up in here.
Right now and I really think and I've mentioned this before. The people who just love Mandalorians. There's a section of the Star Wars fan who just love Mandalorians, Boba Fett, everything about them. I don't know how they would feel, but I mean, if that was their last episode, with seeing the Mandalorian, Dark Trooper fight and everything, in all of its glory, Mandalore is reunited, all that stuff. I mean, that's a pretty good, wrapping it up for them as well,
Sure. Yeah.
And so maybe this is the, if you want to call this podcast episode, maybe is this the end of the Mandalorian? Just that's
Could be.
that'll get the clicks. But
I mean,
I think that, yeah. So I'm gonna go a minus just because of that. If it didn't leave me wanting more,
mhm.
and that's what you hate and you love about season finales, is that you're just like, oh, I gotta wait another, forever how long for the next episode to happen. But here you're just like, you could literally it's a clean cut. You can stop right here.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, real briefly to touch on what you said. I think there's almost a really, I don't know what the word is. I guess I would use the word sadistic part of every person when you finish a show, like you almost expect there to be something that you can like focus your frustration on. And because there wasn't really something like that in the final episode, where it was like, what? I can't believe they did that to that character. I can't believe that character died. There really wasn't anything like that in the episode. And so
Right.
you're left with this like almost angsty feeling of like, there's nothing that like it wasn't good enough where I can praise it above everything else,
Right.
but there's it wasn't like there was a glaring issue with it. So I'm just satisfied with it, and it's a weird feeling,
And
honestly.
I'm uneasy of how content I am with this with this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All that to say, I went back and I watched our episode 7 podcast. I gave that episode an A minus. And upon my initial reaction yesterday, I gave that an A minus. Having now thought about it and comparing those two episodes side by side, I liked episode 7 considerably more than episode 8. Even though I thought episode
Really?
8 had better action sequences, because the episode felt just kind of like non-risk taking,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to demote mine. I can't go all the way to a B, but I'll say B plus.
Okay. So we
Um,
both went down though.
yeah, I think it's just part of that, like the episode setting in, thinking
Right.
about it, hearing other people's feedback. Unfortunately, I feel like that influences like our own thoughts
Mm.
sometimes, and it's like, oh, I guess I could see that. That's probably
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I not to say I'm not excited for season 4, but there's just a general, entirely different sentiment about the future of this show as
Yeah.
opposed to before season 3.
Yeah. I feel like this season was going into the season. Mandalorian was must watch Star Wars television. After the season,
Quickly became not that.
right? Whereas Andor became it. Bad Batch became that. Mandalorian just kind of fell off as far as holding my interest. Um, there were some very cool parts about it. Again, I love the Bo-Katan story, but I think as a whole, as from going from season to season, it just seems like different shows now.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's not, because I mean, and I don't know if that's kind of what they were going for, just basically like this one season story arc, and that's kind of it. And it kind of just feels separate from from each of them. I mean, obviously there are things that Din and Bo-Katan, so the characters will continue to go through, but it just seems like it's just like, all right, well, let's tell this story now until um, but one thing I am interested in is the cloning pieces of it, kind of like you. And if we get more information, and obviously with Dave Filoni now, oh, by the way, who made a cameo, which was really cool.
Yep.
Dave Filoni now getting his own movie during this time period.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in what that's going to be.
Right.
But again, it kind of goes back to our last discussion about how we've been trained to watch TV now, how we're trained to watch 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 episodes of a series. And now we're going to go back to, 2 to 3 hour movies, So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see that stuff now.
Personally, I'm excited for that. Because
same.
Because while I love the drawn outness that creates the suspense of TV, eventually you watch enough episodes of Star Wars or any like universe, and you get to the point where you're like, I just want like a concrete story that I can digest in 2 hours.
Sure.
And I'm excited that we're going to be getting those again. Although, not for another at least 2 years, probably 3, perhaps even. But we'll see. I'm pumped for the Dave movie. Probably more than. Oh, I don't know. That other one, Dawn of the Jedi, piques my interest too. The James Mangold one.
Mangold.
Yeah. Anyways, both of them. I'm pumped for Star Wars to return to movie theaters. That's gonna be a really fun experience.
Oh, speaking of, isn't it on the 28th? Aren't they re-releasing Return of the Jedi in the theaters?
Yes.
Did you buy your ticket yet? Are you going?
I have not, but I am gonna go. I need to buy the ticket. It's the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Jedi. I think it was changed 2 weeks before release or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I would love to find like an old Revenge of the Jedi poster that's like vintage and get it, mounted, and that'd be pretty cool.
That's pretty pricey, I would bet.
Yeah, probably. Revenge is not the Jedi way.
Please subscribe on our YouTube.
Well, on that note, do you have any other thoughts? This is going to be one of our last times talking about Mandalorian in this in-depth of a context, probably for quite some time, I would imagine. So any other thoughts on anything Mandalorian related before we sign off for this one?
This quickly became the Bo-Katan show, which again I was completely all right with, and I think the Mandalorian, the title in itself, I think for this season it was talking about the Mandalorian, the entire sect of the Mandalorian. So I think it was something that I didn't expect, but I did enjoy for this season, and I'm definitely not glad. I wish we got more of it, but at the same time, I'm like I'm glad we kind of wrapped this up in the way that we did, and I'm happy with what we had, and now we just got to move on to our next Star Wars thing.
And that next Star Wars thing, we won't have to wait very long. Next week's podcast will be, I think, the day before Jedi Survivor drops. So this is, I think, our last week for a little bit where we won't have new content to discuss. And then the podcast after that, I believe, let's see, what day would that be? 4th, 11. Is May the 4th a Wednesday this year?
Is it a Wednesday or is it a Thursday?
If May the 4th is on a Wednesday, 2 weeks from today, we probably... No, May the 4th is a Thursday.
It is a Thursday.
So perhaps we'll readdress during next week's podcast what our outlook for the Vision stuff is going to look like for the following week. But lots to be excited about on the near horizon, even though it's not any live action Star Wars as we've been watching recently. Like we've said, the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, comes out on April 28th, and then Star Wars Visions Season 2 on May the 4th, of course, and Jedi Young Adventures on May the 4th. If any of you listeners who have kids out there, or if you just want to watch it for you, I'm probably going to watch it for V, to be honest with you.
I'm watching it, yeah. I'm watching everything, yeah. Hopefully by then I'll be done with a couple more High Republic books. I'm trying to catch up with everything going on there, and because I don't know if they had a huge thing at Celebration, and all the other ones, they've got books, they've got comic books, they've got audio book. I mean, it's a pretty in-depth era. So
Yeah.
diving into it now, it's been a lot of fun. So
It is definitely a rich era. It's gonna provide lots of awesome stories and content for years to come. I think it's one of the
yeah,
most exciting eras.
I ended up subscribing to Marvel Unlimited,
Oh, there you
where
go.
you could read like a huge catalog of all the Marvel stuff, and a lot of the High Republic stuff is on that Marvel
Oh,
Unlimited
nice.
site. So I'm gonna read all of that as well.
Might have to look into that. Well, we greatly appreciate y'all for listening to our 30th episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. We hope you're here for the next 30 as well, and for many more to come. We hope you are subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. If you're not yet, definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We would really appreciate it. And as always, thank you to each and every single one of you for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. Let us know if you're watching on YouTube, your comments down below with what your thoughts were on The Mandalorian Season 3 and what you are excited about for the next coming weeks, months, or even years in the future of Star Wars. And yeah, we appreciate you. We'll be seeing you in the next podcast episode. And as always, may the Force be with you.